For 5 years, she humiliated me in my own home, plotting to take everything I'd built, including my son's heart. And I stayed silent, until the day I decided to fight back. The family that truly mattered. Those 5 words flashed on my screen beside a photo of my daughter-in-law Diana grinning beside my son Michael and her mother, Susan. And just like that, me, the woman who raised him, fed him, and gave every last piece of herself for decades, was erased from their family picture as casually as wiping chalk off a board. My hands trembled as I typed my reply, "Good luck." I didn't know those 2 little words would spark a storm that would turn all our lives upside down. An hour later, Michael's voice thundered through my house. "Mom, what did you do?" "The lawyer just called me about the house, the properties, everything." His face was white as paper, his hands shaking as he showed me the missed calls from the bank. In that moment, I knew the fuse had been lit. But to understand how I reached this breaking point, I have to start from the beginning. My name is Lillian Voss. I'm 63 years old, and I've worked like a mule my entire life to build the legacy my family treated like spare change. It began when I was 16, pregnant, abandoned, and selling homemade pies on a street corner in Portland, Oregon. With every dollar, I bought more ingredients, more hope. Year after year, penny by penny, I built a small empire, 3 rental properties and a bank account most people only dream of. Everything shifted the day Michael introduced me to Diana. It was a Sunday in March, and the smell of my beef stew filled the house when I heard the sharp click of her heels on my hardwood floor. That arrogant little rhythm already warned me she'd bring trouble. She stepped through my doorway in a tight red dress that clung like a second skin, her smile as fake as a bargain bin trinket. "So, you're the mother-in-law," she said, extending a hand cold as stone while her eyes swept me from head to toe. "No, nice to meet you." No warmth. Just a label, like I was a piece of old furniture. Her long, polished nails were a painful contrast to my scarred, work-worn hands, the hands that told the story of every sacrifice I'd ever made for my boy. But Michael, blinded by love, didn't see the poison tucked behind her pretty lips. My son, my pride, the child I raised alone after his father walked out when he was 8, was captivated by a woman already showing her disdain for me. Still, I chose to stay quiet, never imagining I was welcoming a snake that would one day strike hard enough to nearly kill me. That first dinner, Diana turned my table into a quiet battleground. "What an interesting decorating style," she murmured, her eyes scanning my family photos like they were clutter. She paused longest at the picture of me graduating as an accounting technician, the only education I could afford while raising Michael. "This stew has such a bold flavor," she added, pushing her plate away as if my cooking offended her. Every word was a slap coated in sugar, but I smiled anyway, hoping she might soften with time. As I served dessert, I heard her whisper to Michael, "Honey, does she always cook so, homey?" "Back at Mom's, we have a chef who makes more refined dishes." Those words sliced straight through me. She didn't just dislike my food, she compared my humble home to the luxury she grew up in. Her mother, Susan, owned a chain of high-end salons and lived in a 2-story mansion in the wealthiest part of town. After they left, I sat alone clearing plates Diana barely touched. The silence felt heavy, thick with warning. Michael was too wrapped in her fake sweetness to see the way she belittled me. I sat in my favorite chair, the one where I used to sew his school uniforms to save money, and for the first time in years, I cried. Quiet, tired tears sliding down an old woman's cheeks. But I'd survived poverty, abandonment, and loneliness. I wasn't about to let one spoiled little princess make me feel small in my own home. What I didn't know was that this first humiliation would grow into a 5-year nightmare, one that would finally push me toward the most drastic decision of my life. The months that followed were slow, psychological torture disguised as family visits. Diana perfected the art of humiliating me with a smile. Every Sunday lunch, I became the target of her sweet-voiced poison. In front of Michael, she played the perfect daughter-in-law, but the moment he turned away, she became a viper. "Oh dear. Still using that cheap face cream? Look at those wrinkles," she'd sigh while applying her imported serum in my bathroom mirror. Her words were velvet-covered daggers, crafted to wound while sounding polite. I gritted my teeth, kept serving meals, and swallowed my pride like bitter medicine. Things only worsened when they announced their engagement. Michael arrived one afternoon glowing with joy, champagne bottle in hand, talking a mile a minute about wedding plans. "Mom, I want you to be the first to know. Diana and I are getting married in December," he said, hugging me with the strength of the boy he used to be. My heart shattered quietly, but I smiled and told him I was happy, because that's what mothers do, bury their pain for the sake of their children. Diana, of course, had her own plans. In the weeks that followed, she began visiting alone, claiming she wanted to bond and plan the wedding together. But the truth was far harsher. She'd sit in my living room like she owned it, legs crossed, that artificial smile fixed in place as she laid out the new rules. "Look, dear mother-in-law, I know you've been alone with Michael for years, but things will have to change," she said one Tuesday, sipping tea from my best china. Her nails tapped the table in a slow, threatening rhythm. "A married woman needs her space, her privacy. We can't have a third wheel interfering in the marriage." The way she said third wheel made my blood run cold. I explained I never meddled in Michael's relationships, but she already had her script prepared. "Oh, don't take it personally. It's just, men can get so attached to their mothers. And that causes issues in a marriage." Her tone was sugary, but her intent was clear. Acidic. Precise. Throughout the wedding planning, she made sure I felt like an outsider. During dress shopping, she placed me in a corner while she and Susan made all the choices. "This is a mother-daughter tradition," Susan said with a condescending smile. "I'm sure you understand." I sat silently, watching my daughter-in-law's mother take the place that should have been mine. The worst humiliation came during the venue tour. Michael had invited me, but when we arrived, Diana pretended surprise. "Oh, honey, I didn't know you invited your mom." "We agreed it would just be the three of us," she said, gesturing to Susan and herself. "But she can come along, she just won't have a say. We've already decided everything." I became a silent spectator at my own son's wedding. On the wedding day, she made sure I appeared in as few photos as possible. Every time the photographer approached, she'd usher me away. "Dear mother-in-law, could you check if the guests have enough water? Details matter." I obeyed like hired help while Susan posed proudly in all the family shots. After the honeymoon, they moved into an apartment I helped finance. Michael came to me in tears, explaining his tech job salary wasn't enough for a down payment. "Mom, I'll pay back every cent. I just need a loan of $1,000. How could I refuse my only son? But visiting their home became a weekly torment. Diana had decorated it in a sleek, modern style that clashed with everything I was. "Careful sitting on that couch, dear mother-in-law. It's imported and delicate. We wouldn't want it stained." Every visit, she treated me like an intruder in the home I'd helped pay for. At family dinners, she made me invisible. She'd talk only to Michael, about restaurants I'd never heard of, artsy films I didn't watch, trips they planned without me. And when I tried to join in, she'd smile at me with pity. "Oh yes, dear mother-in-law, but you wouldn't know that place. It's quite exclusive." Her words were quiet slaps Michael never noticed. The final straw came when she began steering Michael's financial decisions. One day he showed up with a proposal that froze my heart. "Mom, Diana and I have been thinking, you're getting older, and we need financial security. What if you put the properties in my name? That way, if anything happens to you, there won't be legal issues." It was Michael's voice, but Diana's plan. That night I realized I had raised a stranger. The boy who once cried when I scraped my hand now asked me to sign away everything I'd built. Yet a mother's love is blind. And against all sense, I signed the papers he laid before me, trusting he'd never betray me. That day, without knowing, I dug my own grave. Months later, Diana slipped, and her cruel intentions became clear. She was planning to use a future grandchild as leverage to push me out of my own home. Her cold, calculated cruelty terrified me, but it also awakened something fierce inside me. If she could plan my destruction, I could plan my defense. That night, I locked myself in my bathroom and whispered into my phone, "Elias, we need to move faster. I can't take this anymore." My lawyer had been quietly reviewing the documents, searching for flaws that might undo the transfer. "Lillian, I have good news," Elias said, his voice tinged with hope. "We found several irregularities. First, there was no mandatory cooling-off period. Second, the restrictive clauses weren't properly explained to you. And third, we have evidence you signed under emotional duress." My heart pounded. For the first time in months, I saw a glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel. "What do I need to do?" I asked. "Keep documenting everything," Elias instructed. "Every insult, every humiliation, every sign they're forcing you to live in degrading conditions in your own home. Record conversations if you can, legally, of course." Over the next few days, I became a quiet investigator. I bought a tiny recorder I could hide in my apron and started capturing Diana's most damning conversations. The first recording was devastating. Diana was on the phone with her mother, Susan, calmly plotting how they'd remodel their new house once they got rid of me. "Mom, I've got it all planned," Diana said coldly. "When I'm pregnant, we'll tell the old lady the baby needs peace and quiet. If she refuses, we'll remind her she has no legal rights here. And if she pushes back, we'll threaten a restraining order." Susan's response was even worse. "Perfect, sweetheart. I already talked to the architect. We can knock down her bedroom wall for that walk-in closet you want. And turn her bathroom into an office for Michael. The house will be stunning once her outdated junk is gone." That recording became my most precious evidence, proof Diana had planned my downfall from day one. But I needed more. More signs of the manipulation she used against both Michael and me. For weeks, I gathered material like a seasoned journalist. One afternoon, while Diana showered, she left her phone on the kitchen table. What I found nearly stopped my heart. She had a message thread with a friend, outlining her step-by-step plan to handle the clingy mother-in-law. The texts were chilling. "Girl, this old woman drives me crazy, but I'm almost done with this mission," Diana wrote. "Michael's fully on my side now. I convinced him his mom is toxic. Next step is the pregnancy. Once that happens, I'll say I need peace for the baby and she has to go. It's perfect." My hands shook as I photographed every message with my own phone. Each one was a confession, proof this had all been premeditated. Diana wasn't just selfish, she was a master manipulator tearing apart my relationship with my son so she could seize what I'd built. The most devastating evidence came by accident. One Sunday, Michael stepped out to buy something for dinner, and Diana assumed I was napping. She took a call in the living room, unaware I was standing in the kitchen with my recorder running. "Yeah, Grandma, everything's almost done," she said sweetly. "Michael's like putty. I got the house in his name, and he doesn't know that when we divorce, I'll get half. Old Lady Lillian worked her whole life for this, and it's going to be mine." Then she added the knife twist. "No, Grandma, I never planned to stay with him. He's spineless. No ambition. But he was perfect for getting what I wanted. Once everything's legally locked in, I'll divorce him and marry someone on my level." That was the moment I decided the time for mercy was over. Diana hadn't only humiliated me and stolen my home, she planned to destroy my son after draining everything from him. The war had officially begun, and she had no idea I'd been preparing for months. That night, while they slept, I sat in my armchair and mapped out my counterattack. I had recordings, photos, bank documents, and witnesses. I had a brilliant lawyer who'd uncovered fatal irregularities in the documents. And most importantly, I had the iron will of a woman who had lost everything, and had nothing left to lose. My revenge would unfold in 3 perfect phases, beginning with the social media post Diana made. But before that moment, there were the final months of preparation, months where I became a silent strategist gathering legal ammunition. Through October and November, Diana escalated her psychological attacks. She no longer bothered hiding her hatred, especially when Michael wasn't around. One Tuesday morning, as I washed the dishes she'd deliberately left dirty, she waltzed into the kitchen with that venomous smile. "Dear mother-in-law, I have a proposal you'll love," she said, leaning against the table like she owned the place. "Mom knows a gorgeous retirement home with gardens and activities for people your age. Wouldn't you be happier there? With folks who understand you." The way she said "people your age" felt like a death sentence. I kept my composure, the skill I'd mastered over months. "Diana, this is my home. It holds my memories, my history, my entire life. I'm not going anywhere." She was ready, of course. "Oh, dear mother-in-law, you don't understand. This isn't your house anymore. It legally belongs to Michael. And since Michael is my husband, I'm the lady of the house now." Her words slapped me, but they also fueled my resolve. That afternoon, I met Elias at his office. He'd been working tirelessly and finally had breakthrough news. "Lillian, we found the definitive evidence," he said, smiling with triumph. "The documents you signed have irregularities so severe any judge would void them. Your recordings also clearly show you were subjected to psychological abuse and manipulation." My heart pounded as I flipped through the dossier. "And that's not all," Elias added. "Diana has been using the properties as collateral for personal loans behind your back. She's accumulated over $50,000 in debt tied to assets that still legally belong to you." My hands trembled as I grasped the scale of her fraud. The plan was simple and devastating. We'd file a lawsuit for contract nullification, breach of trust, manipulation, and fraudulent use of assets. But timing was everything. "We need a public trigger," Elias said. "Something undeniable, proof of her cruelty." That trigger arrived on Friday, December 13th. I was in the kitchen making lunch when I heard Diana laughing with Susan and two friends. They were huddled around her phone. "What a gorgeous photo," one friend said. "You all look like the perfect family." I moved closer, and what I saw shattered my heart and ignited the fury I'd been swallowing for months. Diana had posted a picture of herself, Michael, and Susan smiling in my own living room. The caption was the knife that cut everything open. The family that really matters. It was deliberate. Cruel. Public. I, who raised Michael alone for 25 years, who sacrificed everything to give him a future, had been erased with a single vicious sentence. Neighbors began calling instantly. "Lillian, did you see what your daughter-in-law posted?" Nancy, my neighbor of 40 years, asked with a trembling voice. "I don't know how she could humiliate you like that." Others had seen it too, and messages of support began pouring in, but deep inside, I knew this was the moment I had been waiting for. My hand shook as I typed my reply. Just two simple words. "Good luck." The moment I hit send, I knew I had dropped a bomb that would blow apart the perfect little world Diana had built on my back. Right after, I called Elias. "It's time. Everything just happened exactly the way we needed." "My team is ready," he said. "Within the hour, all documents will be in motion. The transfers will be voided. The accounts will be frozen. We start taking back everything that's yours." As Elias set the legal storm rolling, I braced myself. I knew it wouldn't be long before Michael's whole life flipped upside down. While the hour passed, Diana kept laughing with her friends, completely unaware of the disaster coming for her. "Look how I shut those busybodies up," she bragged. "People need to know who runs this family." Her arrogance burned, but it also strengthened my resolve. At exactly 2 p.m., Michael's phone lit up. The bank. Then another call. The lawyer who handled the transfer. Then another. Financial authorities. From the kitchen, I heard his voice cracking with panic. "What do you mean the accounts are frozen? What does voided mean? What irregularities?" Diana's laughter died instantly. Her face drained of color. The third call broke her. It was Elias, informing Michael that a lawsuit had officially been filed, and until it was resolved, every asset reverted back to me. Mr. Michael, Elias said firmly, your mother is legally entitled to reclaim everything she owns. When Michael hung up, he looked as pale as the walls behind him, hands shaking as he stared at Diana. What is this? Why is he saying Mom can take everything back? What did we do? Diana had no answers left. Moments later, Michael burst through my door, his voice trembling. Mom, what did you do? The lawyer just called about the house, the properties, everything. That was the moment I knew my revenge had officially begun. Mom, please tell me what's happening, he begged, sinking to his knees beside my armchair the same way he did as a child. But this time, what was broken wasn't a toy, it was the trust and respect I had spent a lifetime building. I took a slow breath. Decades of hurt hardened my voice. Sit down, Michael. It's time you hear the truth. I pointed to the same couch where he'd watched cartoons as a boy. Diana tried to follow, but I stopped her with one cold look. You sit too. This involves you more than anyone. I pulled out the thick folder I had been building for months, photos, transcripts, financial records, and a timeline of every humiliation I'd endured. Start with this, I said, handing Michael a screenshot of Diana telling a friend she'd pretend to be pregnant just to force me out of my own home. Michael's face shattered. Diana, what is this? She said nothing. That's nothing compared to this, I continued, giving him the transcript of her private confession, her plan to divorce him as soon as she secured half of everything. Read it out loud. His voice cracked as he read. Michael's easy to control. Once everything's legally locked in, I'll divorce him and marry someone on my level. Diana tried her usual manipulation. Honey, she's lying. Your mother is twisting everything, she wants you to hate me. Her voice was empty. Desperate. I pressed play on my phone. Diana's voice filled the room, clear, sharp, undeniable. Michael's like putty in my hands. Silence. Heavy and suffocating. Then I laid the bank papers on the table. Your wife used my properties as collateral for her personal loans. She's been drowning you both in debt while pretending to live like royalty. Michael stared at the documents, then at the woman he married, realizing, finally, who she truly was. She owed $3,000 and planned to pay it off by selling my home. The numbers were cold, unforgiving, truths as sharp as steel. Michael walked to the window, his back to Diana, his shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. How could I be so blind, he whispered into the glass. How could I let her treat you this way, Mom? How could I be so stupid? His pain was real, but it came far too late. And I still had the final blow, the one she'd never recover from. I played the latest recording, Diana and Susan discussing how they'd turn my bedroom into a walk-in closet after forcing me out. Listen carefully, I told him. Hear how they plan to erase me from the home I built. When the recording ended, Diana finally spoke, only this time, she wasn't pretending. She screamed like a wounded animal. Fine. Yes, it's all true. You brought this on yourself, you meddling old woman, always in the way, always sticking your nose where it doesn't belong. Michael needed a wife, not a second mother. Her voice was raw, hateful, stripped of every mask she'd worn for years. Thank you for your honesty, Diana, I replied calmly, which only enraged her more. You think this changes anything? I deserve better than this outdated house and this pathetic family. Michael's a spineless loser, and you're a bitter old hag. Her mask had fallen completely, revealing the venom underneath. Michael turned slowly to his wife. For the first time in years, I saw the strength he inherited from me. Diana, I want you gone. Right now. I never want to see you again. You're kicking me out, she shrieked. You can't do that. This is my house. It was never your house, he said, voice steady. It's my mother's. The woman who sacrificed everything for me while you planned to destroy both of us. Leave now, or I will call the police. Diana looked around wildly, like a trapped animal searching for an escape. Then she tried her last manipulation. Honey, we can fix this. I love you. Everything I said, I didn't mean it. We can start fresh, without your mother interfering. But Michael wasn't that naive man anymore. No, Diana. It's over. You lied. You stole. You humiliated my mother. You planned to betray me. There's nothing left to fix. His voice echoed the strength I used all my life. The doorbell rang. Elias stood there with a police officer. Miss Voss, we're here to formalize the recovery of your properties and serve the nullification documents. The officer held papers that shattered the last of Diana's illusions. Miss Caldwell, he said firmly, you have 1 hour to pack your belongings and leave. Staying beyond that will be considered trespassing. The words hit her like a public execution. She glared at us with pure hatred. This isn't over. You don't know who you're messing with. My family has connections. I'll get back everything that's mine. Her threat sounded like a defeated animal's last roar. Upstairs, drawers slammed, suitcases scraped, objects crashed, her final tantrum. Her last attempt to damage what she couldn't control. But I didn't care anymore. Objects can be replaced. Dignity cannot. When she came down, dragging her luggage, the polished woman who walked into my life 5 years ago was gone. Her hair was a mess, mascara streaked across her cheeks, her once perfect green dress wrinkled and crooked. She looked like the final act of a collapsing play. Michael, think this through, she begged, voice sugary but cracked. This is all your mother's fault. She's tearing us apart because she can't stand you being happy. Don't let her manipulate you. But her words slid off him like rain on a closed window. Diana, he said quietly, I'm done. You can't twist my mind anymore. I've seen everything. I've heard everything. I know exactly who you are. The officer checked his watch. Ma'am, you have 15 minutes remaining. Diana looked around the living room she'd redecorated, as if she were imprinting it into her memory for a future she no longer had. Fine, she spat, voice brittle. I'm leaving. But this isn't over. I'll sue you all, defamation, psychological abuse, conspiracy. She pointed at Elias with venom. You'll all regret this. Elias only smiled, the smile of a man who knew he held every winning card. I suggest you consult your lawyers before throwing around threats, Elias said coolly. We have more than enough evidence to pursue criminal charges, fraud, financial manipulation, psychological abuse. Any attempt to retaliate legally will only make things worse for you. The smirk slid off Diana's face. She dragged her suitcases toward the door, but paused at the threshold to spit out one last insult. Lillian, you're a bitter, manipulative old woman. You've torn this family apart. But Michael will realize his mistake. When he's miserable and alone, he'll remember how happy he was with me, and it'll be too late. Her words were aimed to wound, but they barely grazed me. Diana, I said, rising from my armchair with a dignity I thought I'd lost, I didn't tear anything apart. You exposed yourself. Michael isn't losing a wife, he's freeing himself from a con artist who saw him as a paycheck. My voice didn't tremble. Not anymore. Diana glared at me with such hatred it was almost childish. You don't know anything about real love. You're just a lonely old woman who never got over her husband abandoning you. That's why you couldn't stand your son finding happiness. Her jab was low, meant to break me, but it held no power anymore. My husband didn't abandon me, I said quietly. He died in a car accident when Michael was 8. And even if he had walked away, I'd still rather stand alone with dignity than be a married con artist planning to gut her husband's life. The shock on her face told me everything. I'd been in her home, her life, yet she'd never learned a thing about mine. Just then, a horn blared outside. Susan had arrived, furious and impatient. When she stormed inside and saw the chaos, confusion flooded her features. What is happening? Why does Diana have suitcases? Who are these people? She demanded. Mom, Diana wailed dramatically, the old woman tricked me. She took everything back, they're throwing me out. Susan turned on me with the same arrogance her daughter wielded like a weapon. Miss Boss, this is outrageous. My daughter is a married woman. This property is legally hers. You can't just evict her. Elias stepped forward, his tone cool and surgical. Miss Hensley, your daughter never had legal rights. The transfer contracts have been voided due to serious irregularities. And we've uncovered that she used the properties as collateral for personal loans. That is a federal offense. The color drained from Susan's face. Federal crime? My daughter would never. But even she didn't believe her own words. Truth was finally catching up. Miss Hensley, Elias continued, we also have recordings of you encouraging psychological manipulation to pressure Ms. Boss into leaving her home. Susan's face went paper white. The officer checked his watch again. Ladies, it's time. Leave the property now, or I will arrest you for trespassing. That was the breaking point. Susan grabbed Diana's arm and pulled her toward the exit. This isn't over. Susan shouted. We know powerful people. We have lawyers. We'll take back everything that's ours. I stepped forward, my voice steady. Miss Hensley, nothing here ever belonged to either of you. Everything you gained was through manipulation. And now, you're simply receiving what you've earned. My words followed them as they stumbled out of my house for the last time. From the window, Michael and I watched them climb into the SUV. Diana sobbed hysterically while Susan whispered frantic reassurances, two schemers suddenly terrified of a world without leverage. But they had no case. No rights. No way back in. Elias had built an airtight wall they'd never break through. When their SUV disappeared around the corner, a profound silence settled over the house. Not the suffocating silence of humiliation, but the silence of liberation. For the first time in years, this house felt like mine again. Michael approached me, eyes wet. Mom. I don't know how to apologize. I let her humiliate you. I let her treat you like you didn't belong in your own home. I let her use me, use us both. I've been the worst son. His voice trembled with real remorse. Son, I said gently, taking his hands, a mother's love doesn't vanish because her child is misled. Diana was skilled at manipulation. What matters now is that you see clearly, and you're willing to make things right. The wounds would take time. But healing had finally begun. The officer and Elias completed their final checks. Ms. Boss, Elias said with a reassuring smile, you've legally regained everything. The properties, the accounts, they're all back in your name. And because the marriage happened after the fraudulent transfers, Diana has no claim. None. It was the final seal on a victory I never thought I'd see. When Michael and I were finally alone, we sat together on the old couch where he'd curled up beside me as a child. The house felt strangely quiet without Diana's venom poisoning the air. Quiet. Peaceful. Mine again. But it also felt clean, as if a stain no one thought would ever lift had finally been scrubbed away. The weeks after Diana's eviction felt like stepping into a new life. My home, once a quiet battleground, became a sanctuary again, a place where I could breathe without bracing for cruelty. But that calm didn't quiet the storm inside me. Michael had moved back home temporarily while he began the divorce process. Watching him wander the halls wearing guilt like a second skin broke my heart. My son, once so full of promise, now looked hollowed out by the betrayal of the very woman he'd sworn to love. Mom, how can you forgive me so easily? He asked one afternoon over coffee, his voice barely steady. His eyes were dark, sleepless. I let that woman humiliate you for years. I failed you in every possible way. I topped off his coffee in the same old superhero mug he'd used as a child. Son, forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It simply keeps bitterness from poisoning my heart. You were manipulated by a professional, just like I was. The difference is she used fake affection to blind you while she went after me outright. But forgiving him wasn't the same as trusting him again. In those early weeks, whenever he reached for a hug or tried to rebuild what we once had, something inside me tightened. I couldn't shake the memories of his silence, the way he turned away while Diana chipped at my dignity piece by piece. Those moments lingered like ghosts between us. One morning, while sorting the mail, I found a certified letter that chilled me to the bone. It was from an upscale law firm representing Diana, suing for unequal distribution of marital assets and psychological damages. She'd made good on her threat, and her expensive attorneys had crafted a strategy to claw back part of the estate. I called Elias immediately. He reviewed the documents with his usual forensic focus. "Miss Boss, we anticipated this," he said evenly, though I caught a flicker of concern. "She's desperate. She's arguing that as Michael's wife, she deserves half of any assets in his name during the marriage." I cut straight to what mattered. "Can she win?" Elias paused, too long. "Her case is weak because the assets were acquired through fraud. Still, some judges may interpret Michael's acceptance of them as acting in good faith. If that happens, she could be awarded a financial settlement." The thought of that woman getting a single cent of what I built ignited a fury deeper than any humiliation she'd ever inflicted. Over the next few days, I gathered everything, every recording, every text, every document exposing her calculated manipulation. Meanwhile, Diana did what desperate people do: she launched a pathetic smear campaign on social media. She posted old photos of her and Michael, overlaying them with dramatic captions about controlling mothers-in-law who destroy marriages. Her shallow friends responded with heart emojis and comments about injustice. But truth has a stubborn way of surfacing. Neighbors who'd witnessed my humiliation began commenting on her posts, telling the real story. Nancy, my lifelong neighbor, left a blistering comment: "I saw how you treated Lillian like a maid in her own home. Don't you dare play the victim now." Support for me grew fast. People who knew my decades of work and sacrifice defended me openly. The owner of the corner store wrote, "Lillian worked her whole life for her son. This woman tried to take it all." The wave of truth was too strong. Diana shut off her comments, but it was too late. Her reputation was shredded. Even her friends began pulling away. Then Susan tried a different approach. She arrived at my door one Saturday, alone, her arrogance replaced with a tone that almost sounded like humility. "Lillian, we need to talk," she said. "This is getting out of hand. We can settle this like civilized adults." I let her in, but only because I wanted to hear what game she was playing now. She perched on the edge of the couch like the furniture might stain her. "Look, I know my daughter made mistakes," she began. "Maybe she was too harsh. But understand, she comes from a different world. She's not used to, well, this simpler way of living." Her apology was laced with condescension so familiar it barely stung. "Susan," I said evenly, "your daughter didn't make mistakes. She crafted a plan to steal my estate and destroy my relationship with my son. That's not upbringing. That's criminal intent." Susan's face stiffened. She knew exactly what I meant. "What do you want Diana to do?" she asked, switching tones yet again. "She'll apologize publicly, drop the lawsuit, even pay you compensation." Her offer sounded like a gambler shoving her last chips forward. "I don't want her money," I said flatly. "I want her out of our lives. Both of you. For good." She had years to show me respect. She chose cruelty every time. Now she can live with the consequences. Susan fell silent. Then came her final plea. "Think about Michael. He truly loved my daughter. Doesn't he deserve another chance at happiness?" Her desperation rang hollow. "Michael will find real happiness when he learns to value people for who they are, not who they pretend to be," I replied. When Susan left, I knew I had won, not just legally, but emotionally. Their manipulations were spent. Their influence was gone. But the victory had a shadow, because Michael still had to live with the deep shame of being deceived so completely. That night, Michael and I shared dinner together for the first time in years without Diana's poison filling the room. The conversation felt easy again, remembering his childhood, talking about the future, laughing at old jokes only the two of us understood. For a moment, it felt as if the last 5 years had been a bad dream we'd finally escaped. "Mom," Michael said while we washed dishes side by side, "I want you to know I'll spend the rest of my life making up for what I put you through. Not with words, actions. I want to be the son you always deserved." His eyes held a determination I hadn't seen in years. "Son," I said, wiping my hands on the apron I'd worn to cook his favorite meal, "you don't owe me a lifetime of penance. Just learn from this. And never, ever let someone manipulate you into hurting the people who truly love you." It was a hard truth, but a necessary one. That night, as I got ready for bed in my own room, in my own house that I had finally reclaimed, I felt a deep peace I hadn't tasted in years. I'd won more than a legal battle. I'd won back my dignity, my home, and the chance to rebuild my bond with my son. But I also knew the journey wasn't over. Trust takes time. Healing takes patience. And both would come slowly. 6 months after Diana's eviction, life settled into a balance I once thought impossible. The legal fight ended in a complete victory. Diana didn't just lose her lawsuit, she had to pay legal fees and a fine for attempted estate fraud. Elias had built such a flawless case that even her high-priced lawyers couldn't save her. The news spread through the neighborhood faster than gossip ever had. People who once admired her supposed grace now spoke of her as a warning. What happens when you try to scam a hard-working family? Truth always comes out, Nancy told me at the market. That woman thought she was clever. But she never knew Lillian. Michael slowly returned to the man I remembered before Diana poisoned his life. The divorce went through easily, she had no legal grounds to claim anything. He'd lost weight through the ordeal, but gained something far more valuable: clarity. "Mom, I've been thinking a lot about what happened," he said one afternoon as we worked in the garden, my garden, restoring what Diana had tried to change. Not just how she manipulated me, but why I let her. His hands moved through the soil with the same gentle care he had as a boy when I taught him how to plant his first roses. "Tell me what you realized," I said, planting flowers where Diana had once insisted on exotic plants that never belonged here. It was symbolic, restoring the garden's natural rhythm, just as we were restoring the warmth in our home. "I think part of it was. I never truly valued what I had," Michael said. "I grew up thinking your sacrifices were normal. Like they were just what mothers do. I never stopped to appreciate everything you gave up for me. The late nights, the extra hours, the things you went without. I didn't understand the weight of your love." His words struck deep, but they also brought a quiet, satisfying peace. "I did those things because I loved you," I said gently. "Not to make you feel indebted. But I am glad you finally see the truth. Real love is measured by sacrifice." Michael's transformation wasn't just emotional, it was practical. He started helping around the house not as a guest, but as a grown man who finally understood responsibility. He cooked on Sundays, fixed the roof that had leaked for years, installed new deadbolts to protect our home. "Mom, I want to talk about my future," he said one evening after dinner. "I've decided I'm not moving out again. I want to stay here with you. Help you. Make sure you're never vulnerable again." His words warmed me, but they also worried me. "Michael," I said softly, "I appreciate that. But you're still a young man. You deserve to find real love, build your own life. I don't want my situation to hold you back." He took my hands, steady and sure. "Mom, staying here isn't holding me back, it's my choice. I used to think independence meant getting away from you. But now I understand it means choosing where you belong. And I want to be here, rebuilding what we almost lost." During those months, I heard bits and pieces about Diana and her family. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned Susan had to sell one of her luxury salons to cover the debts Diana created using my properties as collateral. Their family business took a hit that would take years to recover from. Diana tried to start over in another city, but her reputation followed her like a shadow. In the age of social media, stories of manipulation and estate fraud travel fast. A few potential suitors backed away after doing a bit of research. Do you feel any satisfaction knowing she's facing consequences? Michael asked one day. It was an honest question, and I owed him an honest answer. I don't feel satisfaction, I said after a moment. I feel justice. Satisfaction would mean I wanted revenge. But what happened wasn't revenge, it was simply the consequences of her own choices. The truth was more complicated. A small, very human part of me did feel satisfaction seeing that the woman who humiliated me now had to swallow her own humiliation. But I had learned that revenge is poison, you drink it hoping someone else gets sick. A year after the chaos ended, I received a letter from Diana. Handwritten. On expensive stationery she likely couldn't afford anymore. The letter was long, 3 pages of apologies that sounded sincere in parts, but were tangled with excuses. She blamed her upbringing, her sheltered world, her inexperience with families like ours. She still didn't understand that respect isn't a class issue, it's a human one. I don't expect forgiveness, the letter ended. But I want you to know I've learned from this. I'll never treat anyone the way I treated you. I hope you find peace, knowing your strength taught me the lesson I needed. Michael read the letter beside me, and his expression said more than words ever could. Parts of what she said felt honest, but she was still trying to soften the truth, he noted with a calm wisdom that made my heart swell. It was as if she wanted praise for finally admitting what everyone already knew. I chose to stay silent, not out of bitterness, but because Diana needed to face the consequences of her choices without expecting forgiveness from those she had wounded. Some lessons in life can only be learned in the quiet corners of one's own conscience. Today, as I write this in my journal, I can finally say my life holds a happiness I once believed had slipped away forever. My house feels like a home again, built on mutual love and respect. My garden blooms with plants I chose. My kitchen carries the scent of meals I enjoy cooking, and my living room is filled with memories that actually mean something. Michael has begun seeing someone new, Fiona Kessler, an elementary school teacher who treats me with the grace and kindness every mother-in-law deserves. The contrast is undeniable. Diana marched into my home like she was conquering foreign land. Fiona walks in with humility, curiosity, and genuine warmth. Miss Lillian, would you teach me how to make that stew Michael loves? She asked last Sunday. I want to learn the recipes that matter to him, the ones tied to his childhood. Her words were music to my spirit, the sound of a woman who understands that loving a man means honoring the people who shaped him. In her own way, Diana did me a favor. Her cruelty pushed me to discover a strength I didn't realize I possessed. It reminded me of my own worth and proved that it's never too late to stand up to those who try to diminish you. And most of all, it brought my son back to me, more deeply and sincerely than ever before. They thought they could break me. Instead, they helped me build walls that protect, not isolate. Within those walls, fortified by years of wisdom and battles I've already survived, I now live a life rooted in peace, and in the simple truth that valuing yourself is as important as loving anyone else.